Or shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers in grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma. Hey guys, welcome to another podcast episode of the Resilient Warrior Nation. I'm your host, Mike Morgan, and as I like to do every podcast episode, explain why I wear the shirt. This is not a proclamation. Unafraid is the name of a company owned by a man named Eddie Penney. Eddie is a former Navy SEAL, and in the spring of 2023, I sat down and watched a Shawn podcast episode in which Eddie was a guest, not knowing that he was about to change the entire trajectory of my life. During the course of that episode, Eddie was recounting the story of the Extortion 17 incident in which a Chinook was shot down in Afghanistan by insurgents, killing all 38 aboard, including 17 SEALs. It was the largest loss of community in one event ever. And Eddie had lost his best friend, Jason Workman, in the incident. And as he told the story, of escorting Jason's body back first to his hometown, Utah, and then to his final resting place in Arlington National Cemetery, he became emotional. He was crying. I simultaneously began thinking about a call. I'm a 30-year medically retired police officer. A call that I had buried that occurred 5 years before. That was of a 2-year-old found floating in a pool. Beautiful girl named Dana Sikorsky. And no other better way to explain it. Started crying like a baby. I had no idea what was happening at that point. Literally said to myself, what the fuck is going on? I had been retired almost a year at that point, and shortly after retirement began feeling bouts of anger, depression, rage, just general unhappiness, and I really wasn't sure the origination. So as this was going on, I kind of quickly put two and two together and realized that I had suffered some sort of PTSD in my career. Now I know that it was in childhood as well, but in my career, and I knew I needed help. I wasn't sure how I was going to go about it. I didn't think that I'd be able to talk to a therapist sitting behind a desk telling the things I've done and seen, and they were going to be able to help me. So I had heard the special force operators, for the most part, special force guys, coming back from war, self-professed broken men, and their consequent healing journeys using psychedelics. So at first, I said, there's no way. Didn't think that was for me, but I started paying close attention, started researching, and decided that I wanted to journey with ayahuasca. My wife and myself went to a now defunct facility named Soul Quest Ayahuasca Church in Orlando, Florida, March 1st of 2024, where, for all intents and purposes, I literally changed my life over the course of a weekend. As I was coming out of my first journey, and let me preface this by saying that 2 of my friends and former coworkers from the Suffolk County Police Department, at which I retired from, had committed suicide 3 weeks before, a week apart. The sergeant killed himself in the precinct locker room. The universe and I were talking, and the universe told me that my life's purpose was to go forth and help other first responders and vets heal their traumatic issues and PTSD. I said okay out loud, having no idea how I was going to implement that, but decided that was my path. So one thing I decided to do was to create a podcast to do for others what Shawn Ryan's did for me. And in that, I bring on ordinary people who've done extraordinary things with their lives, mostly first responders and vets, some clinicians. But my hopes is that you men and women who are still going through it can identify with their stories, hopefully gain some inspiration and hope, raise your hand and get the help that you need, because I promise you can be healed. I am the perfect example of that. You don't have to go through my modality, but, please, there are plenty out there. Just raise your hand and you can be helped. So I'd like to introduce my next guest. I'm pumped to introduce Colby Neumeier. Colby's an Army Infantry veteran, 3rd Infantry Division, where he deployed to Ramadi, Iraq between 2010 and 2011. He's also a 3-year career police officer veteran. He is a member of the SWAT team, and he is an explosives breacher as well as a defensive tactics instructor. He's a jiu-jitsu blue belt. He's a Christian, a Bible teacher, a street preacher, a husband to an ER nurse of 16 years, and a father to 3 daughters and a wife. God bless you, bro. I have to bless you right there. But Colby, fantastic having you on the show, brother. Welcome.
Yeah, man. I'm honored to be here, and I really appreciate it. And props to you for just going through the headache of putting together a show and doing all this stuff. If technology is not my thing, and just
Mine either, brother.
Yeah, just simply trying to have a Instagram page and do things like that is just a nightmare. So I really are you working solo by yourself? Like, do you produce and do all the stuff?
No, I actually have a company that does it for me. There was no way I was taking on
Oh,
that task, bro. So they do
oh,
all the
right.
editing and I shoot it out to them. Yeah, like Instagram, I handle all that stuff. But as far as this, I'm like, you know what? I don't even care to learn about it. So they do a good job, and I will be sticking with them in the near future,
Yeah,
if not
I
forever.
yeah, it's a lot of work to do this, but like you were saying earlier, man, everybody out there, you know, they need help, and hopefully this will help them get that help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I exactly what I want to do for others is what Sean Ryan did for me. Just have someone like yourself come on. If we have one person, they identify with your story, they raise their hand, get help. That my mission is satisfied, brother. One person at a time, and I will do it. I think for the rest of my life, and especially the psychedelic side of it, I'll be the biggest proponent because it is life changing. I've seen it not only myself over and over and over and over, and they are medicines that were put on this earth by God. They are found in nature. There's no processing to them, and I'm of the 100% belief that He put them there for us to heal. So um, that is my journey, brother. Helped served in one way, and now I'm serving in another, and we'll see where this road takes me. But I'm just glad to be on it. Help, bring in our guys like you, tell a story, and we'd help others out there. So please, let's get to you as a young kid. Where'd you grow up? How'd you grow up? Family. Let's get to know Colby. Today's episode is brought to you by Cutting Edge Testosterone Therapy, a veteran owned, family run clinic led by a retired first responder. At Cutting Edge, they help men and women rebuild strength, focus, and vitality through advanced hormone therapy, peptides, and performance based weight management. Whether you've served your country, your community, or your family, Cutting Edge helps you get your edge back safely, professionally, and with people who understand what service takes out of you. Cutting Edge offers individualized care with no monthly fees or contracts. Learn more at cuttingedgetestosteronetherapy.com. Cutting Edge Testosterone Therapy, built by those who serve for those who still do.
Okay, well, so I reside in Texas now, and that's where I'm a police officer in the DFW area. But I was born in Northern California in Chico, and that's kind of where I spent the first years of my life. That's where my mother and father met each other. Uh, Still to this day, I'm not sure if they were married or not, but either way, that's where I came along. And then early on,
Really?
I
Still don't know, huh?
huh? Yeah, well, yeah.
You still don't know whether or not they were married.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's some things that
More
I just
story
haven't.
coming?
Well, there's just some things I haven't decided to dig into. You know what I mean? Um, but
Okay. Fair enough, brother.
early, yeah, early on, they split up, and then my dad moved to Texas when I was probably. Well, they moved to Texas, and then they split up, and my mom went back to California, and then so from from that time until about third grade or so, I was basically passed back and forth from Texas to California while custody stuff was going on, and I mean I was put on a plane by myself multiple times and flown back, 4 or 5 states away, then come back, uh, so that was right there in the beginning, my brain was just where do I belong? Who do I belong to? Who's who's
Yeah.
this guy? Who's this girl? Who's this person? Who's that person? Uh, and I'm sure they tried to do the best they could, but it's just not it's not a way. It's not a healthy way for a child to grow up. And sadly, more than not, that's the way
No.
people are growing up
Yeah.
now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't know which side's up, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah.
So, who did you eventually end up with?
So my dad ended up with full custody of me, basically because my mother didn't show up to to court. I think court was in Texas, and obviously she didn't come up to out there. Um, yeah, so I ended up with her or with him in Texas, and then the very last time that so even though my dad had custody of me, full custody of me, my mom at one time had came out and got me, basically stole me, and took me back to California. Well, my 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 paternal side of the family was also over there in Fresno. Well, so my dad went over there. I think it was an Easter holiday, and my father's side of the family is really they're staunch Catholics, right? So Easter's a huge thing. And I was at my grandparents' house, and my dad shows up because my mother had let me go to my dad's parents' house, and then my dad and my stepmother show up there. I hope this isn't getting all mixed up, but and he told them, hey, we're just going to take them over to the to Yosemite to the park, and then we'll bring them back after the day. Well, they drove east. We got to Yosemite, and they didn't even stop. They just drove all the way to Texas, right? And then from that point on, I basically was with my dad and my stepmother and my mom. So even then, my dad and my stepmother had been putting it in my brain that my mother was the enemy, right? And
Yep.
again, like we said before you started rolling, it was my normal. I didn't know any better, right? So I remember one time my mother showed up, and uh, she showed up to school where I was. It was like fifth grade maybe. She shows up, and she's walking across the uh, the playground or something, and she yells my name, right? And like I saw her, and it scared me, and I ran to the office. Right, it's me running from my own mother. Right, there's no telling how heartbreaking it was for my
Yeah.
mom for that to happen. But this is what had been put in my brain, and I remember there was a big showdown and everything. My dad shows up, and it kind of gets foggy after that. But that's just very early on. All this turmoil and everything was back and forth. And to be honest, this is mild compared to what a lot of kids go through, right? As far as
Oh
custody
yeah.
and their parents back and forth, and I mean, I consider myself, lucky for it to not have been so bad. Um, but I actually fast forwarded past uh, the worst part for me. But I think a year, no, I think it was back when my parents were battling in the custody. I was in first or second grade, and I was in Texas, and my dad was working on a ranch, on a horse ranch, and we were living in the same house of the people who owned the place, and they had an older son. And at some point, I don't remember exactly how everything started, but at some point, uh, essentially, the older son raped me, and I was like, I don't know how old I was at first or second grade, but it was, uh, I mean, that happened, and I think he maybe been in junior high or high school or something, but he anally raped me, and then
Wow.
it it was immediately when it happened. Uh, I I immediately felt, um, I don't know, I felt dirty. I felt like I had done something wrong. I felt guilty. I felt ashamed. All of that type of stuff. And I
Of
was just
course.
a little kid, and it it didn't like it wasn't a continuous thing that happened, but it happened, and then it was done, and then
Yep.
um and then I remember there was a period of time where I think my dad had come and asked me what had happened, and I played it off. I said nothing, or I don't remember. I made up some sort of excuse. I obviously I didn't tell him what had happened. And even still to this day, I mean,
Oh, you
he's
didn't
pretty
know?
old.
Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't. So it was never dealt with, right? It was something that I buried inside, and then I even got
Okay.
to the point to where I tried to convince myself that it was something that had never happened. You know, of course, as I got older, man, it just turned into. It caused me to be one of the meanest people. Uh, I just so we fast. So that happens. I bury it. We fast forward to the point to where my dad and my stepmother come and get me, and I start living with them in Texas. And my me and my stepmother, we just did not get along. We did not get along whatsoever.
Damn.
And I'm sure I was a turd, right? Some would probably try to jump in and defend me
Yeah.
and say, "Well, I mean, you had
But how old are you
every
at this
right."
point?
I was like, I don't know, I was like sixth grade, maybe, fifth, sixth grade, something like
Okay.
that. So what is that?
Yep.
12 years old, maybe? I don't know. So I'm coming into puberty.
Yeah, about
I
12,
got this,
11, 12.
yeah, I got this baggage, right? I was raped as a young kid, which they still don't know that. I still haven't come out and talked to them. It's really not. It's irrelevant to be honest for me. But um, and she had this. I don't know, man. There was just this. I don't know if she was jealous of me or she didn't like the fact that the relationship that I had with my own father, and she was kind of the third. She wasn't part of that. I wasn't her son. And then it got
Yep.
exponentially worse when my younger brother was born, which is their son. Uh, so it was just years and years and years of battling with her. And I think it was around, it was around maybe eighth grade, seventh or eighth grade is when I started considering killing myself, suicide.
Wow.
Uh, and I'm kind of giving you the cleft notes of everything, but when I got
Yeah.
when I came to this conclusion where uh, I had this other stuff, this sexual abuse in my life, and I was in that area where I was just kind of I would go months, maybe even a year without thinking about it, right? And if it come up, I would just bury it and I wouldn't think about it. I would just kind of you know act like it didn't happen. But it was manifesting in other ways. This all this stuff that had happened, and then on top of that, catching it from my stepmother. And my dad was somebody he was raised Catholic, right, and staunch Catholic. So, there wasn't any talking back. There wasn't no smart mouth. There wasn't, you didn't do none of that stuff, or you're gonna get smacked, right? And so I was caught between a
Yeah.
rock and a hard place. I was dealing with all this trauma, okay, um, and then my stepmother wasn't, she, for the lack of a better term, she hated me, and then I couldn't lash out at it, right, because my dad would lay me out, right? I mean, there's plenty of times
Yeah.
where I had a smart mouth or something. My dad laid me out, and I'm not upset about that. I think your kids need to get whooped every once in a while. So,
Yeah, it's funny. I have
uh,
the same viewpoint about the physical abuse, not abuse, but the way I was punished when I was a kid. Like, physical was nothing. It was the mental that took a toll.
oh right, right. I would have much rather just have my butt whipped than the like my stepmother would like I don't know. It's like a dog, like a nipping dog, yapping, 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 right? And she would just chew me down and cut me down and cut me down and cut me down. And she would say things like, you don't act right because you don't love your family, right? And if you love your family, then you would obey, you would do the right
Yeah.
thing, right? And, you know, or she would tell me I didn't love my dad because I was acting out or something like that. And then she would bring up something that I did a month ago, right? And then, talk about why that sucked. And then something else, and then it would just boil up to the point to where then I'd get grounded for a month or something like that, right? Over, I don't know, something minuscule. And so here I was with,
Yeah.
So I realized that the way to solve this issue was to take one of these factors out, right? And the simplest way was just to take myself out, right? So that was what I started to consider. And I remember the first time I made a plan to kill myself was I had this little white desk that sat in my room, and I lived on a ranch, and we had a lot of horses and a lot of cattle, and I was basically the hired hand there. So not only was all this other stuff going on, but I had to go to school. Well, I had to get up early, do chores, and then go to school, and then come back and get my homework done, and then do chores, and then work horses and all that kind of stuff, which is perfectly fine, right? But I had all of that on me, and then I had my stepmother, and I had the sexual abuse. I had my dad that was standing there like, you're not going to act out against anything, right? And I was like, man. So I had written a note, and my plan was I was going to sit down and I was going to do my homework, right? Because I didn't want to get in trouble for not doing my homework, right? Did my homework, and I'd written a note. I'd gone and got my dad's pistol, and I was going to put my head down on the desk and just shoot myself in the back of the head. And luckily my dad shows up before, he showed up, I guess, earlier, unexpected, before I could carry it out, right? So obviously I'm here now, but that's kind of a fast run right up from birth up to, junior high-ish area.
And can I ask you what prevented you from doing it?
Well, my dad showed up before I did.
Oh, he should. Okay.
Yeah.
Audio was going in and out for a second there. That's amazing. So looking back now, do you create? You think God kind of intervened on your behalf?
Oh well, I believe that for sure now. I mean, there's so much that the Lord has used me to do now that I realize that. So you bring the Lord into the conversation. I'm going to speak to you from a Christian worldview, right? And I, just the fact that I became a police officer was something that the Lord showed me in a dream that's what He wanted me to do. When it came time for everything got laid out, and He's. I preach the gospel on the street and things like that. I teach the Bible in church, and I don't, the Lord's will is never that somebody take their own life, right? That's obviously not something that He desires at all. He desires that we all would be saved, that we would be transformed into the image of His Son, and that we would spend eternity with Him, right? He doesn't desire the death of the wicked. This is what the Scripture says. But He desires that we would repent and we would turn and follow Him. So, yeah, I 100% believe that He intervened then, and He intervened other times along the way where I considered killing myself. I mean, when I was in Iraq, I laid in bed one night with a 30-round mag in my rifle, and I was ready to do it, man.
Really?
And I just didn't, for whatever reason. There's times where I've been driving down the road, and it took almost everything in me to keep myself from running my car off the road at 90 miles an hour and hitting a bridge pillar, So, yeah, he's
That's amazing.
he's definitely he's been there for me for sure.
So what happened after that first time in 7th or 8th grade where you were about to commit suicide? From that point on, like, what made you not do it at that point? Like the next day, in other words, what stopped you? Period. Because you were about to do it. that stopped you that night, but what, stopped you from that point forward?
I just got busy doing other things, you know. It wasn't just
All right.
suicidal,
So
but it
literally
was homicide.
distraction.
Yeah, it wasn't just suicidal, but homicidal ideations. There was a lot of times where I would sit and I would fantasize
Okay.
about killing my own stepmother. Um, I I don't even know if I've even told anybody this, but I used to sit there and imagine myself going and getting a knife and going in and killing her in her bed in her sleep, right? Uh, I would play that over and over and over in my head because of like where I just I had so much anger, so much rage, and so much confusion, so much pain. Uh, and she was the main source of it right then. Well, probably the
Yeah.
one of the main contributing factors was the sexual abuse, the stuff that happened to me when I was a child that had never been dealt with. But she was the
Yeah.
loudest, she was the loudest dog barking at the time, right? So in my mind, take care of that, and that would take care of the issue. But
Yep.
I was a kid, so I knew that if I did something like that, I would be in trouble, right? But there was other
Right.
ways. There was other ways that I felt like I could get after her, or I could inflict pain on her indirectly, right? So um, I don't even know if I want to say this, uh, but I mean, I was mean to her animals, to her pets. Uh, I'm ashamed to even say it, but it was where my mind was at the time. If I could hurt her and still get away with it, if I could inflict pain, that would be a relief to me, right? Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know if you even want me to say this or not. I guess I should have talked to you about it before, but
Yeah. I mean, no, no. I
uh,
mean, we get the gist, and I'm going to venture that a psychologist hearing the story is not going to say it's abnormal. For all the stress, it's almost like you're a pressure cooker, bro, and you're about to blow. You're having a maturing brain. It's not like you're a 30-year-old man and knows how to handle things. You never been taught how to express yourself. How to release this pressure valve, so to speak. So, of course, she's the one right in front of you. The kid that sexually abuses is no longer there. So, and she obviously is bringing, an acrimonious life to you. So that's going to be the one that you're going to you go out and strike at. Um, you're not trying to excuse yourself, nor would I. But again, I would venture to say that if you spoke to a psychologist, they wouldn't think that it's abnormal, these thoughts that you're having. And I'm going to assume some things that you did, but obviously you didn't act on either killing yourself or her, thank God. Um, so what happens now? You get out of high school eventually, and you go right into the military. What's happening at this point?
well, so I grew up on a ranch, and my dad trained horses and stuff. So I grew up in a Western culture. And when I came out of eighth grade and going into high school, a lot of the kids that I was running with, they started rodeoing, going to rodeos and stuff like that. And I wanted to do that. And so I ended up riding bulls, and I ended up being really pretty good at it. And so I did that through uh, I rode bulls for 4 or 5 years through high school. And I was a state champion of Texas in 2003 in my junior year. Um, I mean, I was winning a lot of money and doing a lot of good things and won the whole state. Was the best bull rider in the state of Texas that year, and then went to nationals out in New Mexico. And I didn't do too good there, but I mean, I won a lot of trophies, a lot of buckles, a lot of things like that. Which strangely is we talk about funneling that anger or that passion or what that fire, like you were saying earlier. I think that was probably part of that. Even
Yeah,
then,
that
I
rage.
had,
Yep.
yeah, I had a way to funnel it. And uh, if you if you do your research, a lot of people who become very successful in competition and things like that are people who came out of darkness, you know. And so that's how that went.
100%, man.
I,
Drives them.
so I had a full ride scholarship coming out of high school to go to a college, and I hate school. I didn't really want to go to school, but they were going to let me come there because I was a state champion in high school. It's in the rodeo world. It works a lot like, in other sports where they'll give you a scholarship if you come work for their team, right? You come rodeo for their team, they'll let you come to school for free, right? Well, I pissed that away. I didn't go to one class. I didn't really, okay, I'm gonna have to back up again. My junior year, after I won state and then moving into my senior year, I finally had a falling out with my stepmother, and I packed what stuff up I could find, and I just moved out, and I went and lived with other people, basically couch surfed, and finished my senior year living with other people. Luckily I had some really, really gracious people that came to me, and they, from the outside looking in, they could see what was going on. And this is another one of those points where I didn't realize what I was going through was not good, right? It was normal for me.
Yeah.
So when I had parents of other people come to me and say, hey, if you ever need a place to live, you can come stay with us, right? And I thought, man, that's kind of wild. Like, these people are offering a place for me to stay, Obviously, I know now better, but we had a big falling out. I basically had, I don't know, I was in trouble because I wasn't watching my little brother while I was at a competition where I was supposed to be competing, right? And it was a big thing. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm leaving. Like, I'm moving out. I don't know if he didn't believe me or what, but I think he had got to the point to where he realized that there was such an issue between me and my stepmother that he couldn't fix it. And at the same time, I was the middle child, and I had an older brother from a different mother. So that marriage didn't work out. And then my mother and my dad, they didn't work out, right? And so I wasn't really trying to get my dad to break up another family, So I realized the only way, if this is going to work, either she has to go or I got to go. If she goes, or if they split up and she goes and I get to stay with my dad, then that means my little brother has to live, in a broken home like I did. And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna leave. I was 17. I was like, I packed up some stuff. Actually, my best friend at the time, he said, man, just come stay at my house. So I went and stayed at his house for like a week or two, a weekend. And then I had another family who had come and said, hey, you can come stay with us. But they already fostered kids and stuff, and they had a full house. So I stayed there for a little bit. And then a lady named Barbara Cooper, Fred and Barbara Cooper, they're still alive. And if they ever hear this, I just want to tell them that I love them for sure, because they basically were empty nesters. Their son had graduated the year I was a senior, and he had basically gave me one of their rooms at the end of the house. And man, those people, they took me in like I was their own. And I remember Fred, every time I'd be leaving the house, he said, hey, you need some money? I was like, no, Fred, I'm okay. I don't need any money. And he wouldn't let me leave without giving me some money, right? He'd give me, 20 or 40 bucks.
Really?
And they never locked their back door. They never asked me where I was going, when I was going to be back, nothing like that. They just gave me a home to live in, They were good, solid Christian people, and they loved me. And they demonstrated to me one of the greatest examples of what Christ-like love is, because they didn't have to look. That I wasn't their kid. I wasn't their burden, but they took me on without, right? It wasn't their, they chose to love me, to take me on. And not just that, but they fed me, they clothed me, they housed me, they put gas in my truck, even when I was running around being stupid, right? And they never asked a word. They never, or they never asked for an explanation, nothing. They just took me in, and they're the ones who kind of helped me through going to college, and which I didn't go to college, but I went for a semester, and then I decided that I wanted to transfer to a different place, and so I transferred to a different college. Still didn't go to class there. What's funny is you go to this other certain college, and they'll give you a that coach is, there's a coach over every rodeo team, like there's a coach over other, ball teams and things like that at colleges. But Paul Brown, the coach there, he said, if you come and rodeo for us, we'll give you a certificate. We'll give you a degree, a welding degree, right? And I said, okay, whatever. And this was the deal that he made for everybody that went to rodeo for him. Well, a few years ago when I was applying for the police department, I had to get all my transcripts, right? And I called that college down there, and there was some kind of what do you call it? There was a penalty or something I had to pay to be able to get my transcripts from them, and so I paid that over the phone. And then the secretary on the phone, she said, "Do you want me to send you this degree that you have also?" I said, "Yeah, I guess so." So I made out with a degree.
Never heard that one in my life, brother.
Yeah. Anyway,
hilarious, man.
So I the college thing didn't work out for me. And around that time, my mother in California hit me up, or I kind of tried to rekindle this relationship. And I don't think I had talked to her in like 11 years probably. And I surely hadn't seen her in probably more than that. And she offered to let me come out to California and stay with her. And so I was tired of being in Texas and tired of just, I was kind of wandering around like I didn't know what to do with my life. And she let me go out there. And so I ran up and down the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, kind of doing some rodeoing and stuff like that. Just living and trying to figure out what life was about. I was in that area where I would stop and I'd be by myself and I'd think to myself, what am I doing? Like, what is going on with my life? I didn't have any direction in my life because growing up, I thought what I was going to do was be a professional bull rider. And I kind of got to the point to where I didn't have a desire to do that anymore. Mainly because my dad was my coach, my biggest coach and mentor in that. And then when I left, I couldn't have him without my stepmother, right? So basically, that relationship was severed. And around 2008, 2009, right at the end of 2008, out the spring of 2009, my mother had mentioned to me joining the military. And I had a cousin that was a Marine, and he had already been deployed multiple times and back. I think he was a truck driver. I don't know. But my mom was like, you enjoy, doing kind of wild, crazy stuff. Why don't you just join the military? And I was like,
never thought about it before?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. Not that I was against it. It wasn't something I had ever crossed my mind. And I remember, you're talking about the Lord preventing me from killing myself. I think this was another part or time where I know it is because I started praying about it, and the more I thought about it, the more I considered it, the more on board I was with this idea of joining and going. And it was right. It was Obama was president or just became the president. Was that '08? Uh, anyway,
He was 08, yeah.
yeah,
08 and 12. Yep.
yeah, we were at war, and I knew if I joined that I was gonna deploy, you know. And for everybody else around me, they were like, "No, hell no, man, you're not. You don't need to go to the military and whatever." And but the more I heard everybody telling me no, and that I shouldn't do that, and that, you know, what if you die or whatever, and the more I prayed about it, the more I just felt at peace with doing this, you know. So yeah, I ended up going to the recruiter, and what's funny is I was on the way to the Marine Corps recruiter, but between me and there was an Army recruiter, and so I just stopped in there to see what they would say. I walked in and I said, "What do I got to do to join the Army?" And they said, "You're here." And I was like, "All right." So that's how that story went. And then we went through the whole, what do you want to do and all that. And I was so naive that I thought if you wanted to shoot a gun and like do the stuff that you saw in like Saving Private Ryan or something, I thought that you either join the Marine Corps or you join the Army, right? And if you wanted to be on boats, you joined the Navy. And if you wanted to fly planes, then you went to the Air Force, right? I had no idea that there was every kind of job you could think of within the military. So, not that I would have gone another way besides infantry, but when they asked me what it was I wanted to do, there was this big cardboard cutout in the corner in the recruiter's office of this guy standing there with a rifle and a ghillie suit, you know. I said, "Well, I want to do what that guy does." And they're like, "Well, that's it. Sounds like you're going to be 11 Bravo and we're going to get you a Ranger contract." And I said, "Okay, whatever." You know, I didn't know my butthole from a hole in the ground, right? But this was direction for my life, and I was at peace with doing this. There was nervousness. I was scared. I was terrified, to be honest. But at the same time, there was still peace.
Yep.
And it was, it felt like I was getting away. Yeah, it felt like I was getting away from all my past, which I was. But we know that the trauma that you personally go through, you can run it all to the other side of the world and do all kinds of cool things. And that stuff's going to stay inside of you until you deal with it. And eventually it's going to come out in bad ways, right? And for me, it came out in rage and alcoholism later on in the story. But at the time, man, I had direction. And again, I say that this was the Lord's will, okay? He's the one who moved me this direction, because what it did is it separated me from everybody who was influencing me to where I could be by myself and he could start dealing with me and walking me through becoming who I was, not who my stepmother made me, not who the guy that raped me made me, not who, my parents being divorced made me, all that kind of stuff. But he could start dealing with me on my own, right? So
yeah,
I negotiated a Ranger contract, and it was going to be a airborne Ranger contract with a $24,000 sign-on bonus. And I went to MEPS and started going through the process there. And I remember I was standing in line, and there's lines and lines and lines. You basically go there and stand there for 24 hours in lines doing the processing stuff. And these two, they look like, I don't know, FBI agents or something. They dudes in suits. They came walking right up to me as I was standing in this long ass line, and they said, "You come here." And they grabbed me and they took me over to this interrogation room is what it was. And they sat me down at a table and sat across the table and they just drilled me, I don't know, for 15, 20 minutes with all these different questions. And I was like, what the hell's going on, man? Like, I'm already terrified, right? And they're like, they're drilling me like I'm a spy or something. And I didn't know what the deal was. Well, come to find out, I was applying for a ranger contract, but I had outstanding student debt because of my college stuff. And when I finally got to the station where the guy like officially puts in your job description and what you do, where you're going to go, he told me that they were revoking the ranger contract because I couldn't get a secret security clearance, but I could still go to airborne school. I could go 11 Bravo and then go to airborne school. And so I was like, I'm terrified. I'm scared. I wanted to get through this process. But I was, because I felt like, man, if this doesn't work out, what the hell am I going to do with my life? I got nothing to do,
Yeah.
So I was just thankful for whatever. And I didn't know what airborne was either. I was like, well, what's that? They said, well, you jump out of airplanes. I said, hell yeah, I'll do that. I don't care. So anyway, I ended up with a 11 Bravo contract, and I got to go to airborne school right after basic. So basic, and then what they say, AIT, advanced infantry training. But if you go to Fort Benning, it's all there at the same place. So really, there's no transition. And then jump school is at Fort Benning also. So at least it was when I was there in 2009. You get in the plane. What's funny is you get in the plane in Georgia, and then they dump you in Alabama because it's right on the border. The DZ, the drop zone, is in a plowed field in Alabama, but the hangar and the runway and everything's in Georgia. So, yeah, I made it through basic training. That was a experience all of itself. It was a culture shock too. It was, I had heard people cuss, but I'm sure every veteran and every police officer out there is going to laugh, right? But I had heard people use profanity, but I had never heard it the way the culture in the military uses it, right?
Really?
Like just now, in between conversation, in between thoughts, when I say or and or but or whatever, they would say fuck. They would say fuck or fucking or fucker or fuck, right? And I was just like, what is going on here? I had never heard that ever, right? And lo and behold, by the time I got out of the military, I was talking the same way. Well, not by the time I got out, but definitely by the time I came back from Iraq, it's almost embarrassing for me to listen to the way I talked back then, man, because it sounded like a child who didn't know what other words to use, so he just used profanity, But that was a culture shock. Basic training was fun, man. It was a kick in the ass, but it was fun. It was, you get there and especially I can only speak to infantry training, and it's much different than any other MOS. You're there to learn how to kill people and stay alive the most efficient way, right? So there's just that aura there. And all these guys that were our drill instructors were there during the invasion and had been to Iraq multiple times. And the company that I went to, they had just had like 4 or 5 suicides in the class right before us because of how hard the drill instructors were and or the drill sergeants.
Really? Basic training?
Yeah. We had guys we had to put on suicide watch in our class, because it's just such a culture shock, somebody comes from wherever and they don't know anything about life, but they get thrown. Now I was older when I went to basic training. I was like 23 years old, and I had been all around the United States and stuff, traveling when I was riding bulls and stuff. But there's a lot of these guys that are
Yep.
17, 18 years old, and they're coming into basic training, and they literally just came from their mother's basement or from, mama's house. And, you know,
Yeah.
you got drill sergeants screaming and yanking them around and throwing them around and teaching them to kill and not be killed and all that kind of stuff. Which is, if you're, that's just the way it is. If you're going to be an infantryman, that is your job to learn how to kill efficiently and to learn how to stay alive and to try to help your buddies stay alive.
Yeah.
And everything that goes along with that. So, we one of the funniest things, which it probably happens in I don't know if it does now. It seems like basic training's a lot softer now, but I mean, we definitely didn't have our phones and stuff like that, right? I see pictures now of people in basic training and they get on their phone like on a Sunday or something. That's freaking crazy to me. But we would have meetups in certain companies, and or in certain platoons. Right? We had a company with 4 different platoons, and it was set up in there was 2 companies on the bottom level, 2 platoons on the bottom level, 2 platoons on the top level, right? And then it was this big wide open bay, just like you'd see in a movie or something. And we would meet up after all the drill sergeants were gone. We'd say, fight. There's going to be a fight in second platoon, right? And so the whole company would gather in second platoon's bay, right? And everybody would be stripped down in just their shorts or something like that. And anybody that had beef with somebody, they just go at it. They just bare knuckle box it up. And I mean, there was brawls. There was brawls all the time. What are you going to do with 100-something different guys that have been basically, they've been put in this facility for 5-6 months. It just bred that kind of mentality, and that's what you need for guys who are fixing to go. Every one of us was about to deploy anyway. We were about to go to Iraq or Afghanistan.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure probably, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of those guys are dead now. I know a lot of the guys that I served with are dead. Either they killed themselves or they got blown up or shot or something. But yeah, basic training was.
So how was your time in Ramadi when you went over?
Well, let me tell you a story about jump school first.
Yeah.
So I got out of basic. I went through. We had to go. We had to sit a week in airborne hold, which means we just sit there and wait. We get to go. We had to show up for formation, and then we get to go out and kind of, dick around or whatever. And there's a few guys from my platoon or my company that actually were all going to through the same class at airborne school. So we did that. We got into airborne school, and in airborne there's 3 different weeks. There's ground week, and then there's tower week, and then there's jump week. So ground week, they just get you familiarized with with all the equipment, walk you through, how you're supposed to jump out of the plane, how you're supposed to do your PLF, your parachute landing fall, which doesn't really work unless you have a really strong crosswind. You still hit the ground like a bag of crap. And then tower week is where they hook you on a zip line, or they put you in a big, really tall tower and drop you. You get to practice that way. And then the third week is jump week, where you actually go down to the hangar and you jump. In the first, the morning of the first jump, we were in formation and we were running down to the hangar. And I was on the right side of the formation, all the right side, and we're running. It's in the dark. We have to run down this road to the hangar. And there was a car that was coming up the road, and they shifted the formation over to the right. Well, it was so dark I couldn't see. I knew that the edge of the road was right where I was, but I didn't know that it dropped like 6-8 inches. And so we're running in formation down the road. We shift the formation over, and I step off this curb, and I hear my ankle, my foot pop. Like my foot rolled, my toe dug in the ground, my foot rolled, and like my tib and fib were the first thing to hit the ground, and it just popped and it pulled everything off the top of my foot. And I just hit the ground and rolled and jumped back up and got back in formation. By the time we got down to the hangar, I could see my foot and my ankle swollen in my boot. And I just sat back and laced it up as tight as I possibly could to get it as tight as I could. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I just went through 6 weeks or 6 months of basic training. I went through airborne hold for a week, 2 weeks of this, and now I'm right here at the end. And I know that if I say something or if I'm not able to perform, what they're going to do is they're going to recycle me, which is going to put me here another 6 months, right? And I'm like, no way, man, this is not happening. Because I was really homesick at the time. And another story that happened while I was in basic training was my wife and I had decided that we were going to get married when I came back from there. So I was homesick. I missed her. I missed, kind of family and stuff like that. And I was like, there's no way, man. I'm just going to have to suck it up and just deal with it. So I sat there, and when you go down for your jump, they put you in the hangar, and you put your gear on, your chute on and everything, and then they inspect you, and then you have to sit there still. You can't get up, take a piss, or you have to go through the whole process all over again, because they put you in a sterile environment. It's just, for insurance purposes, right? So that they can physically know that you didn't jack with your stuff, and then, if there's a fault or something that happens and your chute doesn't open, they can't point to this and say, well, somebody wasn't watching this guy or whatever. So they inspect you, then you sit there for 3 or 4 hours maybe, and you can't touch anything, you can't do anything, you just sit there until it's time for your chop to get up and get on the plane. So you do that every day when you jump. Well, it's finally time to jump. My ankle is just, it's shooting pain all the way up my leg. I've laced it up as tight as I possibly can to just try to mitigate what's going on. I get on the plane, and I jump. I hit the ground. It just, the whole jump and everything else. It was exhilarating, obviously, if you've ever jumped out of a plane. But I hit the ground out in this plowed field, and I gather my chute up, or I unhook my stuff, and I gather my chute up, put it in the bag, and there's the instructors are called black hats. They're just drill sergeants, but they wear a black baseball cap, and they're called black hats. And they stand out in the middle of the plowed field in the DZ in the drop zone, and they got a bullhorn. They all got bullhorns, and they're there just to yell at you as you're coming out of the sky to kind of try to coach you through what's going on, right? If you have a malfunction or something like that, they're telling you to pull your reserve or whatever the case is. Or they yell at you as you run by. You know how drill sergeants are. And so I got my pack, and I'm having to run out of this field, this plowed field, to the drop zone, or to where the muster point is, and this black hat standing there. As I run by him, and I thought I was playing it off pretty good. I didn't think I was limping. And he says, "Are you limping? You hurt yourself?" I said, No, drill sergeant, I'm good." "Bullshit. I see you limping." I said, "No, I'm good, drill sergeant, I'm good." He said, "If I see you limping one more time, you're out of here. I'm cutting you." I was like, "Roger that." And I just kept running, And I was like, "Oh man, what am I gonna do?" So we finally get everything unpacked, and we get back to the barracks. And what I did was I switched bunks with the guy that was above me, and I got on the bottom, and I got a wool blanket, and I tied it up as a sling in the bottom of the bunk and just elevated my foot. And I had these guys sneak me Advil and ice from the cafeteria, and I just iced it and kept it elevated. every night I did that, and my 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 foot swelled up and turned purple and green, and my toes, had purple and green rings all around them,
Damn.
and they were all flayed out like this because of all the swelling that was down. And I would have to jam my foot down in my boot and just lace it up and jump like that. Um, and I finished airborne school and graduated on September 11th, 2009. I graduated airborne school. Um, so yeah, and then 6 months
That's
later,
crazy.
yeah, I got slotted to go to Third ID, which is just on the other side of Georgia. And so I went home for leave for like a week, and then basically my wife and I moved. Well, we got married um, the day after Christmas. In between that time, and we moved to Georgia, to Fort Stewart, Georgia, and then yeah, Third ID is a rapid deployment unit, or it was then, and so they were right in the middle of a cycle of refitting 315 Infantry, which is the group that Audie Murphy was with in World War II. We got there, and they were
Okay.
refitting that company, and we basically trained up, and then we deployed to Ramadi in July of 2010. So, yeah, that's how the whole entry into the military went.
Damn. That's some non-smooth entry, brother.
Yeah, I was just thankful that I made it through though, right? Because I was like, man, if this doesn't work out, I don't know what I'm going to do. I got nothing to do, and all the while with
Yeah,
all
it's
this
amazing
stuff
when
that
you have enough motivation what a human can do.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
So, how did your deployment go then when you finally got over there?
Uh, it was another culture shock for sure, right? Um,
I'm sure.
you when you get over there, not only is the weather, we got over there in the middle of July, so it was, or June, was it June or July? It was the middle of summer, and we get over there, and it's 130 degrees, uh, and the wind is always blowing over there, and so like you don't really even sweat. You do sweat, but like you don't get beaded sweat on your skin because the wind's blowing, and you're literally, it's like standing in the middle of a giant hair dryer, Uh, and what's funny is, it's funny how you can get acclimated to almost anything, right? Anything can become your norm. You just got to go through the process of getting used to it.
Yeah.
Uh, it
Yep.
was, I think one of the hardest things was the transition from, because we were there for a whole year straight, right? Some guys get to do, I don't know, there was talk about us being there for 14 months. Now, I know a lot of guys did deployments like that. I think my squad leaders, when they had gone over before in '05, they did like 14-month tours. And that's like, if anybody has ever been uh, deployed to, it's such a psychological, I don't even know how to put it. It's some, you have to become somebody completely different if you're going to live over there for that long. You know what I mean? It's not just like we get in there, we do our
How
thing,
so?
we're there for a couple months, and then we just get out, right? We're still Americans when we leave. Like you have to become,
Yeah.
you have to become an Iraqi or an Afghani. When you go over there, you have to adapt to their culture. You have to start thinking the way they think, and so there's like the honeymoon period where it's all new. It's nerve wracking. It's scary. Everything's new. And after about 2 months, between 2 and 3 months, that's when it really hit me. I remember sitting there, and kind of all the new had worn off. Um, and I was like, holy shit, I have to be here another 9 months. Like I have to stay here another 9 months. Like,
Yeah.
holy shit. Like I'm really here. Like, and then, and then the thought of, because when you get over there, you're naive and you think, yeah, I mean, it'll be fine. It won't be that long. I'll be back home and I'll get to see, I'll get to be with family and things like that. And you're kind of hoping and looking forward to that time, when you get through this and you get to go back home. But bro, after a certain amount of time, and then you realize, wow, I still got 3 times more length of time that I to go before I get to go home. And it was like, there was a period of time, man, where that's where I hit another low, really big low. I was telling you, I sat there with my loaded weapon and I thought, man, like, I don't know if I can do this. Just, and,
Wow.
and everybody deals with that differently, I guess. Maybe I dealt with it. Maybe I was a quote unquote pussy, but it was just mentally, man. It was. You combine that with the fact that, I mean, we're running over IEDs all the time. We didn't really get into
Yeah.
gunfights at that time. We were always having to deal with IEDs, right? And so you had to just. That was
Okay.
the first time I had to come to terms with actually dying, and you had to sign your you had to write your letter or whatever in your will, and I want, if I die, I want all this stuff to go to whoever, that kind of thing. First time you'd ever had to do that. First time I'd ever like mentally said, okay, I mean, I actually probably am going to die. I'm probably not going to make it out of this country alive, right? Uh, but
Yeah.
you can't, you can't quit. I guess you could claim being crazy, and then everybody's going to call you a pussy, right? Because they know you're not. Nobody wants to be there, you know. Uh, you're going to
Oh
leave all
yeah.
your buddies. You're going to leave all your buddies there. You're going to leave your platoon behind, and all that kind of stuff. So you're stuck, right? Again, stuck between a rock and a hard place. Uh, and that's really where you just got to nut up and be about it. Be about what it is that you signed up to do, and suck it up. Um, and and accept death, and and then once I transitioned through that period, uh, you know, some would say evolved or whatever. Um, it was very easy it was easy. Like I, it was easy to live there. It was easy to operate there. It was easy to put your gear on and be QRF and just run out and go. And we didn't even think about dying anymore, man. We didn't care. Like, we didn't care if we shot you. We didn't care
Yeah.
if we got shot, whatever,
I guess
man. Go ahead.
it's almost like Band of Brothers when that lieutenant was like talking to the red-headed guy, and he's like, "The problem is, you think you got a chance of getting out here alive. It's like once you come to the, reconcile the fact that you're already dead, you'll be good." And all of a sudden, that guy thought about it, and he was like a maniac after that. And I guess in some respects, man, you really have to come to peace with it. Like it's you can't fight it every day. You're gonna go out and you're gonna lose your mind. Like just accept it as it may happen.
Yeah, and that's, I don't know if we went through some kind of training or something to uh, the psychological training. I don't remember anybody ever saying, "Hey, this is what you're probably going to go through, and you have to, like we just said, come to that understanding that you may die, and uh, that'll be that'll be the point where you're able to move freely, you're able to think freely, and that kind of thing." I guess everybody comes to that conclusion on their own, comes to that point on their own, or they break or they crumble under the pressure, right? One of the two. Uh, in in the
Yeah.
military, especially in combat arms, MOSs, and then in like police officer, being law enforcement and things like that. I think that's something, especially for guys who are still operating, still doing stuff. I think you know if you can get a hold of that and you can get that worked out in your own mind, you're going to be a lot more free to be able to do your job and to be able to especially look out for your buddies, look out for yourself, because you're not always worried and paranoid and scared and all that kind of stuff. And, uh, you know, you could take that a little too far and become reckless, right? I mean, some of the best guys
Yeah.
I've ever been around, they were wild and crazy and reckless, right? But they were also disciplined, and uh, the best ones are the ones that you have to kind of rein in and bring them in a little tighter. Uh, it's easier to bring those wild ones in and slow them down a little bit than it is to have to motivate somebody that's not motivated at all.
Yeah.
But
100%, man. Dude, I remember getting out of the shower one day when I was a cop in Atlanta. Atlanta was insane. And I was looking in the mirror and I'm like, God, if it's my destiny to die in the line of duty, and I'm not glorifying death. I didn't want to die in any way, shape, or form. But I was like, if it's my destiny, all I ask is you let me kill the guy that kills me. And that was it. Like, I accepted it. It was a possibility, but there was no way I was fearing it, man. Rather live a hero. Not that I was a hero, but than die a coward. And, maybe it's different in war, but again, like you said, man, guys have to come to their, I've seen guys who cops for years and years and years, they went scared to work every day of their lives. I don't know how they did it. It's like PTSD in and of itself.
well, yeah, well, it's another form maybe of it. It's they're living in the middle of that trauma. It's not past. It's
Yep.
it's current. It's just right there, and they're always worried and afraid. And luckily, right now, I'm part of the defensive tactics team, so I get to interact with the recruits who are coming and they're going through the academy. And that's one of the things that even now I'm seeing guys like I just went to a call a couple of days ago. Uh, it was a disturbance call where a guy was acting wild and crazy, and he was getting loud, and this guy was in a cycle behind me, a younger guy, but he's not really assertive, right? And so we go into this house, and as law enforcement, when we go into somebody else's house, we're in an environment that we are not familiar with. This is their home turf. They know where everything is, right? So
Yep.
I'm there backing up this guy, but he's young. He's not very assertive. Well, we asked this other guy who had been getting crazy, um, if he had an ID, right? And he's like, oh, I don't know where it is, and so he starts digging around for it. And, so immediately he starts digging around in the couch, right? That's red flag, right?
Really?
Uh,
Hell
and
yeah.
and I'm standing there. I'm like, okay, no, we don't have to do this. Like, we can just go by your name and date of birth or whatever. And he's like, oh no, I think I left it in the back room, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, no, you're not going in there. And I'm thinking this, but I'm not really in charge,
There's no way in hell.
I hadn't like took charge or whatever of the situation at the time. I should have just done it right then, right immediately. But this younger officer that was there with me, he lets this guy get up and walk down the hallway. Okay, he's got his back to us, and I'm thinking this is not good. And I'm telling him, I said, hey, don't let him go in that room. And he pulls out a key, unlocks the door, and goes walking into the back room. And so I'm like, well, I guess we're about to do this, man. So I immediately got my pistol halfway out of my holster, right? And I'm like trying to sidestep and get, so I don't shoot my partner in the back. And this guy goes in, and I'm telling him, I said, no, bro, we don't need your ID. Come back out here and sit down on the couch. And finally, I just grabbed the guy, and I grabbed him by his arm, and I just walked him out. And it's just like, you can't teach that assertiveness and aggression. I guess maybe you can, but some people just have it, and some people just don't have it. Some people have it, and they don't realize they do have it until they kind of get scared until realizing this could have went really bad, bro. Like, we could have got in a gunfight. One of us could have got killed, whatever the case is.
Yep.
Like, you've got to be assertive, and you've got to take control of the situation, take control of that environment right there, So I'm thankful that I'm in the academy teaching process where I can, at least identify people and at least try to say, hey, look, You're not being very assertive. You need to step this up. You need to understand that when you go into these environments, some of these people don't give a shit, man. They're going to shoot you, and they don't care. You know, and if you don't take control of the situation, it's going to be bad, right?
Hell
Uh,
yeah. Absolutely. It's unnatural for a 21-year-old to start giving orders like a 40-year-old guy. He's just never done it in his life before. But you need to get comfortable with that ASAP, or else, again, he could have been in a gunfight that, in that exact moment. Like, there's no way in hell I'd be letting that dude, go through the couch, number one. Secondly, if he's like, it's in the back. Yo, you're not going anywhere, bro. Tell me where it is and I'll get it, or I'll just
yeah,
run your name right now. There's no way in
yeah,
hell that you're just running around your house right now. And I don't care if it's your house or not. But,
yeah, yeah.
it's a job of experience. The problem is, until you get that experience, what's going to happen in those situations.
Yeah. In the academy they showed this video of a guy. I want to say he was in Arizona or Utah, and a sheriff shows up and starts to talk to this guy, or he knocks on the door of the house, and the guy's standing there, and the guy didn't have a jacket on or something, and the officer wanted to talk to him. He said, "Yeah, hold on, let me go and get myself a jacket." So the guy turns, walks out of view down the hallway, and an officer didn't go with him and let him go back in the house, right? And this image always sticks in my head, and it's one of the things that I always replay as I'm on scene or something dealing with people. Anyway, the guy goes and gets a jacket, comes back out, and they go out, and they're all casual, and everything looks copacetic, and they're talking or whatever, and then the guy that went and got his jacket had a gun in his pocket, right, and just pulls it out, shoots the guy, kills the officer, right? And it's just like, you know, you're stuck in those situations sometimes. I don't want to be an asshole, right, for no reason. And I hear a lot of people getting all butthurt and belly aching. Well, why was this cop so aggressive, or why was he was so cold, or he was so uh,
Aggressive?
whatever. He was like, he seemed like an asshole. He came off
Yeah.
like an asshole. Well, like, we are viewing it from a completely different standpoint, right?
Oh, yeah.
Immediately we are on guard. We are immediately thinking, in any sort of situation, what am I going to do if this goes bad? I've got complaints all
Yep.
the time of people thinking that I was being a jerk, and it's just, you don't understand. When a cop walks up to you on a traffic stop or something like that, you got to understand what's going on inside their brain, because they may have just came from a situation where they almost had to smoke somebody, right? But now, they're dealing with you, and they
Yeah.
know that people get shot, or cops get shot all the time on a traffic stop. Somebody just leans out the window and shoots them and stuff like that. So, if a cop shows up and he all of a sudden, like, puts his hand on his gun, or he has his hand resting on his gun or something like that, like, don't take it personal, but you may have done something that caused him to go, oh, I and they're half a second away from doing that anyway, no matter what. Like,
Yeah.
the guys that are on guard now, there's a balance between being super paranoid and scared, and being able to read what's going on in the situation. So
Yeah.
uh, I
Scared is one
people,
thing you never want to be. And if you prepare yourself training wise, you should not be scared. But, tactically, you need to be. Listen, I was on 30 years. I was on a motorcycle squad. I've done thousands and thousands of car stops, every single car stop. My hand's on my gun as I'm walking up to that car. And if anyone says something, which they normally don't because they don't even see it, it's not like I'm sitting there flagging, it's on the side of the car. It just looks like my arm's kind of resting this way. And if they're bringing that thing up, man, they're getting popped because that's going to be out in at eighth of a second. And if they were to say something, be like, "Yo, man, I got in a shootout for years ago on a car stop," which I didn't, but they don't know that. And be like, I'm ready for if it ever happens again. So, um, having my gun on and drawing the gun are two different things. They can say whatever they want. As officer had his hand on the gun. Yeah, I have it on every single car stop. So those are
yeah.
fantastic tactics.
Well, I
But
mean, there's
yeah, I
there's
mean,
been
as you
times.
get more time on, you just get more comfortable.
Yeah, there's been more time. There's been times
What's
where
that?
I've I mean, in a foot chase or something like that, where I ended up pulling my gun out and drawing it on somebody, and even, I mean, I've even gone as far as like putting it up to somebody's face, uh, and
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
because you don't know,
dude, I
right?
crack
If
people in
if
the
I
face
haven't,
with my gun.
yeah, if I haven't
Yeah,
patted somebody down or whatever the case is, and or we're struggling and fighting with somebody, like action beats reaction every time. So, uh, if I can help it, you're not gonna
yeah,
get the jump on me, but.
exactly. Every single pursuit I've ever gotten in, man, he bails, I'm bailing, my gun's out in my hand. I have no idea why he's running usually, even if it's a stolen car, man. A lot of times those guys are walking around armed. So if he turns around, tries to pop me, I'm already ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
And hey, listen, man, it's been used once or twice as I'm about to catch him, just crack him in the back of the head. Probably can't do that these days, but used to get away with a little bit more back then.
Uh,
So listen, brother, how are you doing these days as far as mental health and things you're going through on the job? Guys or girls who are going through it right now and just heard your story, like kind of how did you get through, or essentially through to the other side from all the trauma that you suffered both prior to your career and then military, and things still ongoing to this day.
well, that's the thing, right? Some of us have come into adulthood with trauma, right? And then we go into career
Most.
fields where you're going, like we go to situations 3 or 4 times, multiple times a day that other people may not deal with, maybe only once or twice in their entire life. And so
Yep.
some of us are in kind of the strange area where we have a lot of trauma from the past, and then now here we are having to deal with it on a daily basis. And how do I categorize it? Where do I shelve it? What do I do with it? Um, I, the Lord has been the biggest factor in how I've dealt with it. Okay. Uh, there were times, I mean, I haven't talked about like all the times I had mental breakdowns and things like that after. This was before I even became a cop. When I was driving a truck, I hadn't really dealt with the trauma and stuff, and there was times where I'd have a mental breakdown, just sitting in a drive-through trying to figure out what I wanted on the on the drive-through menu. Right, I had so much built-up anxiety inside of me that I
Yep.
just broke down crying. Literally broke down crying with my kids sitting in the back seat, my wife's in the driver's seat, and all she did was ask me what I wanted to eat. Right, and I looked at the menu, and it just broke, man. And I was like, I just sat there and cried. And the crazy thing is,
Yeah.
you don't know where it came from, so you don't know what direction to go to deal with it, right? And so they're sitting there looking at you like you're
Yep.
crazy, and they're like, "What is going on with you?" Right? And you don't have an answer. You don't know, right? Um, but the Lord has been my peace. There's a verse in the Bible that I go to, it's Philippians 4:6 and 7. It says, "Be anxious for nothing, but through prayer and petition, make your requests, or with thanksgiving, make your requests known to the Lord, and his peace, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus." Literally, what it's saying is, one, be anxious for nothing. So don't be anxious, okay? And you say, well, how in the world do I not be anxious? What do I do with this anxiety? Well, the Word of God says, bring those things that you're concerned about to Him in prayer, all right? And explain to Him. It's just a conversation between you and the Father, all right? And when you do
Yep.
that, He will give you peace, which, when it says surpasses all understanding, it's that kind of peace where you're in the midst of a battle. Like David said, in the midst of my enemies, God prepared a table for me. Literally, David's saying, in the midst of a war where I could be dying at any second, God comes and dines with me and dwells with me and gives me the peace which surpasses all understanding. All right. And he will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. Namely, you have to be in Christ. Okay, you have to have confessed your sin, believe that He has died on the cross for you, and that He is basically your only hope for salvation. That's step number one. But after this, these things, it doesn't mean just because you become a Christian doesn't mean that anxiety, depression, and all those things are going to go away magically. That doesn't happen. Okay. We still are here in this flesh dealing with this fallen, broken world. Okay. And what this verse means is you take those concerns to him. All right. And in exchange, when you trust, when you push those things over onto him as a trust that he'll take care of that, then that peace will come. Okay. Now, I said before, it's something that you have to continuously work at, right? That is something that you do for that day. Well, the next day or the day after, something else may come about. Like in our instance, being cops, you know, you had something extremely traumatic 2 days ago. You got off shift, you got to go home, everything's fine. You got, or you took that stuff and dealt with it, the way the scripture tells you to. But then you might get in a shootout. The next shift you go on, right? So it's a continuous battle. Things are always warring and coming against us and trying to cut us down and beat us down, right? I mean, that's the way this system is set up anyway. Satan has set up this system to cut down God's people and to chew up and spit out the souls of men and women, boys and girls, right? I mean, that's why this world is so jacked up, man. And so number one, it's like I said before, I'm going to come at you from a biblical worldview. And first and foremost, I got saved in Georgia when I came back from Iraq. My wife and I got saved. We repented of our sins, and the Lord really started working on us and held us together. I didn't even bring up the fact that I was a raging alcoholic. And praise God, I've been sober for 1,767 days, I think, today.
Nice.
It'll be on my 40th birthday this next month. It'll be 5 years I've been sober. And as he held us together. My wife was going to leave me in Georgia, but something happened and it fell through. And I think the Lord just worked it to where it just didn't work. Even though we were falling apart, he was holding us together. And we've been married 16 years. On the day after Christmas was our anniversary, which happened to be the day that her grandpa died, which is a whole nother thing that I haven't even brought up. Day after Christmas, her grandpa goes down, and we live right next door to him. And me and her and the girls, our kids, if we all go over there, and he's down on the floor, and we end up all having to do CPR on him, and he dies right there on the floor. This is like 2 weeks ago. And my kids are sitting there, and he was a DNR, and my wife, she's an ER nurse, right? And so she knows what a do not resuscitate is, right? We know what that is as cops, but also what has to happen when you properly do CPR, right? I mean, you got to tear their ribs apart to get their heart moving.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so she was like, no, he's a DNR. But Mimi, his wife, Kaylee's grandmother, was like, yeah, no, we're not. She wasn't having any of that. She was like, do whatever you have to do to help him. And so my wife's like,
Honestly, I have a huge problem with that, man. Huge.
yeah, my wife's like,
Wishes.
she's crying, and she's having, so she gets down and she starts CPR, and she just zips him up, man. And so she's like sitting there doing CPR, and she's crying because she just had to do this to her grandpa, and she feels like crap. And my daughter's standing here, and it's like, holy moly, man. But that's not something that just because you are a Christian or because you're super spiritual or whatever, that's not something that you're immune to, right? Life still happens. You still have to deal with all these things. But what God says is that he will walk with you through this stuff, and he will give you a strength that is outside of yourself, and will give you a peace to deal with it. And we did it, right? I was a pallbearer. I got to give my Class A's, and I did it as an honorable thing to him because he was a 35-year Air Force veteran, and me and another Army vet, he wore his greens, and we were pallbearers for his funeral, and the Lord has walked us through that. And it wasn't easy, but it was possible, right? And so somebody who might be listening saying, well, what's the catch? I mean, people deal with this stuff all the time in other ways, but or deal with their trauma. What's a negative way that you deal with your trauma? Well, you turn to dope, you turn to sex or porn, or you turn to um, alcohol, right? Anything to numb or to take to use as a crutch to deal with these things that you haven't properly dealt with. And what do?
Yeah.
They suck the life right out of you is what happens, and you become a slave to those things. Uh, you know, somebody that's a career alcoholic, they may be a good cop or a good whatever, but eventually, man, it's going to destroy their life. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
and so if you don't properly deal with the trauma, and you don't turn it over and give it over to the Lord, it that's the way you're going to deal with it. And that's the way I was dealing with it in the beginning. That's why my wife was going to leave me, because I mean, I drank a 6-pack or a 12-pack every day, and always had tequila in the freezer, and like uh, I was in a bad way, but luckily the Lord's delivered me from that. So, but as far as nowadays how we're doing, again, like I
Yeah,
said, it's a work in
exactly.
progress, man. But it's not something that can't be done. Okay, and it's not something that's worth for anybody
Yeah.
out there that's listening, man. If you're having suicidal ideations, you just go talk to somebody. Okay, and if you don't, I understand this person may not get you, or you don't like this certain doctor or whatever the case is. Don't stop trying. Go to another one, right? And I know that what I'm still dealing with, another thing that people have to understand, if you know somebody who's dealing uh, with depression or something like that, they know that you're there for them, and they know that maybe talking to somebody is probably a good thing to do. They just don't feel like it. And it's not necessarily that they don't feel like it, it's that they don't know what to say. They don't know what to say,
Yeah.
right? We get into a conversation like, you know, it's just, so what I'm trying to say is I want people to understand that I know how you feel, and it's, even if you don't know what to say, just talk to somebody, okay? And if you have a loved one that's dealing with depression or suicidal ideations, they know that talking is probably the best thing to do, but they probably don't know what to say, because you know I know one of
Yeah.
the things for me, man, is if I don't like bringing it up, because I feel like I'm just going to be a downer to people. Oh, here's Colby. He's depressed again, or he's upset, or whatever. He's always sad. And it kind of keeps me from talking. But I I know that it's what needs to happen, right? And it's not worth taking your life, for sure.
No. No need to use a permanent solution for what is a temporary problem, no
Yeah,
matter what it is. The damage you do to your family and your children will be everlasting, and everything you're going through is going to be heaped upon them. They're going to think a lot of times they were the source of your unhappiness, and this is how drug addicts are created. Prostitutes, domestic abusers, can now they're looking for their love elsewhere, and it's not an answer. Reach out, raise your hand, ask for help. um, and listen, whatever if it's religion, whatever it is that gets you through these times is what works and what should be used. There is no modality to me that is a bad one if it works for you.
yeah,
So
amen. I like how you
listen,
say
brother, I
raise your
actually have
hand.
to hop off because I have to run to the airport. How I say what?
How you say raise your hand, right? People don't realize that they are not alone, right? There's actually probably
No.
majority of the people that are dealing with stuff like that. So anyway,
Yep. Me too, man. As I was going through it, same thing. But yeah, brother, I hate to cut it short, but I got to run to the airport and get my cuz. So it's been fantastic speaking to you. If anyone wants to reach out to you, please tell them how to do so. The links will be in the bio.
Okay. Yeah. The way I'd like for anybody to reach out if they want to is I have an Instagram page called the Biblical Operator. It's just the biblical operator. You can instant message me on there on Instagram. I also have a YouTube channel where I teach through the Bible and stuff like that. But yeah, if they want to reach out, that'd be cool. But man, Mike, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, what's
and
your
I
channel
really-
on YouTube, Colby?
It's the same thing, the Biblical Operator.
Okay, we'll absolutely list that as well. All right, brother. I thank you so much for your time. It's been fantastic talking to you. I wish you the best. Stay safe out there, and teach these youngins how to do their job, man. Because it's up to us older guys with some experience to keep them safe.
Yeah. Hey, man, it's good talking to you.
Absolutely, brother. I wish you the best, and we'll be in touch.
Order, shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers at grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma